Have you ever just stood at the base of a massive skyscraper, looked all the way up, and thought, how on earth does that thing stay up? We see them as these static, unmoving giants. But the truth? They're in a constant, invisible battle with nature, with wind, with the earth itself. So, let's dive into the secret weapons engineers use to make sure these giants always win the fight.
And this isn't some new problem we just invented. Nope. For as long as we've been building tall, we've been trying to outsmart the wind. Just look at these pagodas in China. They have been staying strong for over 1,000 years. That's a serious testament to how long we've been tackling this challenge.
But let's be real. Today, the scale of that battle is on a whole other level. We're not just building tall anymore. We're building super tall, and we're cramming them into these dense city blocks, creating wind tunnels and aerodynamic puzzles that those ancient builders could never, ever have dreamed of.
So yeah, every single one of these giants is waging an invisible war 24/7. And to win it, engineers have this amazing, specialized toolkit. We're going to pull back the curtain on 3 of their most powerful tools, and then we'll take a little peek into the future.
All right, our first tool, well, it takes us straight into the virtual world. Because before anyone pours a single drop of concrete or raises one steel beam, engineers build the entire skyscraper digitally, and then they try to break it.
The secret sauce here is a technique called the finite element method, or FEM. Now, I know that sounds super technical, but the actual idea behind it, it's kind of brilliant. You take something impossibly complex, like a skyscraper, and you digitally chop it up into thousands of little, simple, manageable pieces. They're called finite elements.
So here's how it works. The computer creates this massive web of all those little elements, and they're all connected at specific points, kind of like joints, called nodes. Then, when a virtual force, say a massive gust of wind, hits the building, the computer calculates exactly how every single one of those little pieces bends, stretches, and moves.
And that is the magic of this whole thing. It is literally like creating a building's digital twin. Engineers can throw virtual hurricanes at it, they can simulate epic earthquakes, all to find every last weak spot and fix it, long before construction even gets a green light.
But, as amazing as these digital twins are, sometimes the virtual world just isn't enough. That brings us to tool number 2 and why you absolutely still need to test these things against real, physical wind. Just look at the insane detail here. These are not toy blocks. Engineers build these incredibly precise scale models of the skyscraper and the entire city block around it. Then they stick this whole miniature city inside a massive wind tunnel to see how air actually behaves as it swirls around the real thing.
So, why go to all this trouble? Well, this quote from the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat really says it all. The standard rule books, the building codes that everybody follows, they were mostly written for your average low-rise building, not for these unique, super tall towers.
And that's the key takeaway right there. For these incredible one-of-a-kind giants, the normal rulebook just gets tossed out the window. Every single one of these designs has its own aerodynamic personality, and it needs a custom reality check in a wind tunnel to know for sure how it's going to behave.
Okay, so we've tested the shape from the outside, both virtually and physically. But what about the tools that are built right into the skyscraper itself? This brings us to the building's own personal giant shock absorber. Because you gotta ask, right? After all that design work, all that testing, what if the building still sways too much? What happens when the forces of nature are just too powerful for a clever shape to handle all by itself?
Well, that's when you bring in the tuned mass damper, or TMD. Okay, picture this. It's a giant computer-controlled weight, we're talking hundreds of tons, hanging like a pendulum near the top of the building. When the wind shoves the building to the right, the TMD swings to the left, basically canceling out the motion. It's like a huge suspension system for the entire tower.
And to get just how vital this piece of tech is, check out this scenario from an engineering study. They modeled a skyscraper getting hit by strong winds and an earthquake at the same time, but without a TMD. The amount it could sway is, well, it's pretty scary.
1.9 meters. That is over 6 feet of side-to-side movement way up at the top. I mean, forget about being uncomfortable. That's structurally dangerous and completely unlivable.
Okay, so let's look at the data, because it's pretty wild. This graph shows that side-to-side movement. See that crazy yellow line? That's the huge 1.9 meter sway without the damper. Now look at the orange line. That's the same building, but with the TMD switched on. It just flattens that curve and calms the building right down.
And it's not just about the overall sway at the top. This shows something called interstory drift. That's the shearing stress between each floor. That yellow line shows the building getting dangerously strained. But the TMD, that orange line, pulls that stress way down into the safe zone.
And this chart, this is the one you would actually feel. Acceleration. That yellow line is motion so intense it would make people on the top floors feel sick and dizzy. The TMD, in orange, brings that acceleration down to a level where you probably wouldn't even notice it. It's what makes the top floors comfortable and, habitable.
So what's the bottom line here? In this test, the tuned mass damper cut the building's worst-case sway by a massive 32%. It's not just an add-on, it's an absolute game-changer for buildings super tall.
So where do we even go from here? Well, that brings us to our last stop, and a seriously cool glimpse into the future. We're talking about giving our buildings their own nervous system, creating a skyscraper that can actually think for itself.
What you're looking at here is basically a building's heartbeat. An AI-powered system used super-sensitive instruments to just listen. It listened to the natural vibrations of this bell tower in Italy for more than a year, learning its normal rhythm, its unique pulse, day in and day out.
And this is where it gets incredible. The AI system noticed this tiny little flutter in the tower's heartbeat, something no human would ever detect. You know what that little anomaly was? It was the 6.0 magnitude Amatrice earthquake, which had just hit 400 kilometers away. The building's nervous system felt an earthquake from clear across the country.
So that really leaves us with this one final, mind-bending question. We've gone from fighting wind with stone pagodas to building digital twins and installing giant shock absorbers. Now our buildings are learning to feel. So if one single tower can sense an earthquake from hundreds of kilometers away today, just imagine what our interconnected, intelligent cities will be able to do tomorrow.